irrespective of Israel's policies, irrespective, independent of Israel's existence, Iran has made its mind set to develop the mega capability nuclear in order to advance its mega historical goal, which is domination of the Persian Gulf, and with the aim of removing the only effective mega obstacle, namely America's power projection in the Persian Gulf, in the Indian Ocean, and in the Middle East. All that has absolutely nothing to do with Israel. Iran obviously is a lethal threat to Israel, but the motivation of becoming a nuclear power is focused on much more important factor as far as they're concerned, and that is the USA. And according to what I would call the fact base, guilty until proven innocent school of thought, and in contrast with the hope base, fact dismissing innocent until proven guilty school of thought, according to the guilty until proven innocent school of thought, nuclear Iran would compound dramatically the clear and present and lethal threat to vital American interest, vital interest of Western democracies, lethal threat to Israel, as well as to Saudi Arabia and other pro-American Arab regimes in the Middle East. And anybody who studies the track record of Iran must conclude that Iran is not going to shy away from using the nuclear capability. A regime which was willing to sacrifice 500,000 children on the altar of clearing minefields during the war against Iraq in the 1980s may not be shy or may not have compunction about using nuclear capabilities, elements. Moreover, the idea that one can contain a nuclear Iran, the idea that one can tolerate a nuclear threshold Iran, does contradict, again, the track record of Iran. The principle of Islam, which they follow devoutedly, that we are talking about a confrontation between the abode of Islam, the residence of the believers, and the abode of the Al-Harb, namely the Dar Al-Harb, the residence of the disbelievers who must be dealt with the sword. And last and not least, according to Islam, which Iran in general and Rouhani, the president in particular, excel in, and that is the Islamic art of double-talking, deceptive-based type of dialogue and agreements with the infidel in order to shield or advance the goals of the believers. And when you expand those principles upon which the revolution established itself back in 1979, 1980, one can realize how come Iran is the #1 sponsor of Islamic terrorism throughout the world. Why is Iran collaborating with North Korea in the development of missile ballistic capabilities, developing jointly missiles, long-range missiles, which today can already reach Europe, and eventually, according to Iranian plan, they could reach the USA. The aim is to direct a dagger into Riyadh. You become dominant in Yemen, you're dominant in over the axis from the Indian Ocean to the Red Sea and through the Red Sea to Europe. This is the route of the major oil tankers and other large vessels. If you dominate Yemen, you're right next to Oman, which is targeted by Iran. And as you know, it's Oman and Iran which jointly control the only access from the Persian Gulf to the wide open sea. How emboldened are they going to be in Caracas when their partner becomes nuclear? Iran already has missiles on Venezuelan soil. What would stop the radical anti-American regime in Venezuela from asking the Iranians to deploy some nuclear systems to Venezuela, and how difficult would it be to deploy to a metropolitan area in the USA? And why should anybody assume that the Iranians would shy away from smuggling some nuclear system devices on a seemingly innocent vessel docking at the port of Baltimore or Mobile or Long Beach or New York? And therefore, the conclusion is very obvious. Once you have a nuclear Iran, the only question would be how rapid and how wide in scope will American concessions be in the Gulf, in the Middle East, in the Indian Ocean, Latin America, and beyond. We are not talking about primarily an Israeli issue. This is primarily an American as well as an Israeli issue. And I think it's very important to realize that, because when you do something for another person, you marshal some of your resources. But when you realize that the machete is getting closer and closer to your own throat, then you marshal all your resources to take care of that machete.